does look like a High Life bottle, doesn't it?
It would be cool if Bethel Heights had like the Topo Chico side project.
Someday. I think we have too many projects going on right now.
Is it well water bin?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. I love that idea. When I go to my family's farm, I always bring back a bunch of water because I love it so much. So maybe I need to do something similar.
Yeah, it's been Ted's $1 million idea forever to bottle Bethel Heights water, but I think as long as he's going to be married to Pat and have Mimi as his daughter, it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
All right, folks, welcome to preview week for Willamette, the Pinot Noir auction. The wines featured in this tasting series are small lot bottlings for our exclusive trade auction. Contact Emily at the WVWA if you don't know about the auction and you'd like to learn more. I'll put her email address in the chat. For this year's auction, we're pleased to announce a charitable partnership with the James Beard Foundation's Food and Beverage Investment Fund for Black and Indigenous Americans as part of their Open for Good campaign. All funds raised on auction lots beyond the opening bids, as well as through the paddle raise pledge, will go to the investment fund. I'll put that website in the chat as well. I also want to take a moment to thank all our auction sponsors for their ongoing support. And now I'd like to introduce today's featured panelists representing Lot 46, Adam Campbell of Elk Cove Vineyards. Representing Lot 59, Gina Hennen of Adelsheim. Representing Lot 70, Ben Casteel of Bethel Heights. And representing Lot 84, Shane Moore of Gran, Moraine. And now I'll kick it off to our host, Rob Alstrin of Adelsheim. Rob, take it away.
Thank you, Julia, and happy Friday afternoon, everybody. It's Friday everywhere, at least I think. And it's afternoon. It's been a big week, so thanks for tuning in and letting us bring a little bit of Oregon to you. I do want to reiterate the appreciation of this auction and raising funds for the WVWA, which does a lot of exceptional things for us in the wine industry. A lot of times it's bringing events like Oregon Pinot Camp and Pinot in the City out to markets. Obviously this year there's been a change, and a lot of the support we've gotten from WVWA has been in the way of how to reopen our tasting rooms, how to manage in this crisis time, how to handle harvest during COVID times. So a lot of great benefits that are coming to us and funded by this auction. And really proud to have James Beard Foundation focusing on Black and Indigenous people and their businesses of restaurant and beverage business. So really excited to be able to put some money towards their ongoing support of that channel. So I am excited because this is the Chardonnay collaboration chairman's lots, which is really exciting. I moved to Oregon in 2000, and I've been a big Chardonnay fan for a long time. It's great to see the momentum going and bigger strides for Chardonnay. And in particular, I think this speaks to a lot of the culture of Oregon wine industry, this collaborative nature. So I'm really excited to be with a lot of great people here today. So thanks for coming in. What we will do is maybe start by talking about 2018, because that's the focus of this auction. And let's talk about how it relates in particular to Chardonnay, because we've been talking all week about 2018 and Pinot. Let's talk about, is there a difference for Chardonnay and what that is and what you saw in sort of the 2018 harvest for Chardonnay. Adam, you want to start it off?
Yeah, thanks, Rob, and thanks for Julia for all your work on these. It's fun to be able to present Chardonnays. Usually when we're actually at the auction, it's even better because it's after people have Pinot Noir stained teeth and are running around, a good refreshing Chardonnay fits the bill. So we'll try to recreate that today. Talking about 2018, I know we've already heard through this week really high praise for the Pinot Noirs from that vintage. And I think a lot of that had to do with the small clusters, small berries, very reasonable yields. But all those things that are great for Pinot Noir also translate to Chardonnay. And I felt like we were able to get really nice, beautifully ripe fruit a little bit earlier in the piece with lower potential alcohol, nice bright acidity. I know for me, when I'm picking Chardonnay, we're looking essentially, we don't even really look at sugars. We look at pH rise and total acidity and really try to capture freshness in the varietal, knowing that you could always build weight later in the piece through winemaking and nice French oak barrels and lees stirring and some other things. So we feel like if we don't capture that freshness and get nice, good, bright acidity to start with, you're in a losing battle. The good thing is, I know for our wine here, which I'm tasting, and for all my friends on the panel that also make amazing Chardonnays, we're able to do that in this cool climate of Oregon. And I think it shows, and look forward to have everybody taste these Chardonnays when they become available.
Thanks, Adam. Yeah, it sounds like, 18 vintage Chardonnay or Pinot tended to be quite favorable. Gina, you felt the same, and I know you've got obviously various blocks and ages of Chardonnay. So how did you see the 18 Chardonnay?
It's interesting. We've been so focused on the 2020 upcoming vintage and just bottling the 19s. It's hard to remember what 2018 even looked like. But I mean, I would echo some of Adam's comments about what's good for Pinot Noir usually translates really well into Chardonnay. We didn't see huge berries. I mean, they were very nicely sized. We got really nice freshness out of the juice. And then our style is usually to pick early because we really like that vibrancy, that freshness that you get, the fresh fruit quality. And we like the sort of more linear profile that you get from the texture as well, more structural, a bit more taut. So we handle the Chardonnay in the abstract sort of the same way that we do Pinot Noir, which is to take early and focus on the vibrancy of the wine. For Chardonnay, obviously it's a little bit different. It has different processing times. We tend to hold our Chardonnay in barrel longer than the Pinot Noir. We'll over vintage it in barrel. And then the thought was really no different. We were working with another partner who bottled theirs a bit earlier. So we took their portion and put it into a barrel to age together for a while before bottling.
Interesting. That's great. Ben, Shane, do you have any more to add on the 18 vintage for Chardonnay versus Pinot or other varietals? Ben?
No, I think, there's been a lot of hyperbole over the 2018 vintage. I think mainly just because the choices were all pretty easy in 2018. The growing season, other than being in a drought, most of us are dealing with established vineyards, so it wasn't as big of a deal. But, it rained, I think, a little bit in May, and then we didn't see rain again until the beginning of September. So lots of concentration. It wasn't hard to get that. I think for acidity, at least in my neighborhood, we sort of just have it. So I think our pick dates are a little more normalized with Pinot. And I'm not saying that we just have it as though that's always a positive thing. I mean, there are vintages like 2019, 2010, and 2011 where we have, just blow your head off amounts of acid. And so we're actually picking quite late in the season just to try and calm things down. But no, overall, I think in 2018, the wines I think are pretty easy to wrap your head around. I think there's good potential with reds and whites for ageability, as well as good potential for enjoyment right now. And that is a sort of a rare thing for us to stumble upon in Oregon, to get both.
Ditto. No, it was awesome. It's my personal favorite Chardonnay vintage that, I've only been doing it up here since 2013 Chard, but it was my personal favorite. So it's either I'm getting better or the weather's getting better. Vines are getting older. I don't know.
It's you, Shane.
It's me.
Yeah.
Rob, you're muted.
Of course, I'm muted. It's great to have this panel because we got Adam and Ben who both kind of grew up in the vineyard, second generation, and then obviously Adelsheim's been around a long time too, and Gran, Moraine, so you've got some new eyes and some generations here looking at what's going on. So it's really, really exciting. just on the Chardonnay, the momentum, obviously, I'll let you speak to it, but obviously you're seeing some momentum growing in Oregon Chardonnay and sort of development and in sales growth that's pretty positive. You know, I think for many people it was Pinot Gris for a long time, and now Chardonnay seems to be really kind of coming in strong. So does anyone want to point to why that is, or what you see happening over the next 5 years? Is Chardonnay going to become, you know, on parallel to Pinot at some point, or what do you think, Ben?
No, I don't think that. You know, I think it's going to take a long time. I mean, you know, the old vines here at Bethel Heights are every bit as old as the Pinot. I mean, they planted Chardonnay, I think, sort of naively in some of the best parts of the property. And so it's been here for a long time. It just hasn't quite had the same sort of groundswell of attention that Pinot got. I think, you know, for a long time, you know, you get a rather large state to the south that makes an awful lot of Chardonnay. And so, you know, New World growers, I think, all got sort of lumped into the same basket, fair or not. And as you said, Rob, with Pinot Gris, I mean, you know, you take all the white varieties and add them all together, and it's still like less than half the amount of Pinot Gris planted in the state. So I think, you know, Chardonnay is certainly seeing a resurgence kind of critically. And I think certainly a lot of the wineries are talking about it more. And frankly, I think that's the way it needs to start is, you know, it's been here for a long time, but this, you know, sort of starting small, focusing on quality, and then sort of building out. I think it's going to be, you know, probably decades, but I think that's the way that Pinot was built here. And I think that's probably the way that that Chardonnay will be built too, with, you know, quality first, quantity second. And if I was wearing a hat, Rob, I would give a hat tip to you, because at one of your old jobs, you were one of the first people who I think made, you know, it was clear that it was maybe possible to sell expensive Chardonnay in Oregon. I didn't think it could be done. And then Domaine Serene started selling a whole bunch of it. So well done, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. It was an odd thing because I was with a distributor and I had like 4 other Chardonnays from Oregon, Drouhin and Shalem and others. And my distributor didn't carry those. And he's like, what are you doing selling these wines that we don't carry and it's not yours? I'm like, I just want you to see that Chardonnay is really good up in Oregon. So it takes decades to be an overnight success. Yes, I agree. Here's to a lot more hard work in the Chardonnay front. And luckily, it's for me and probably many of you, it's about the process, not the end game. So, I mean, I love doing it every day, opening people's eyes to Chardonnay from Oregon and seeing their reaction to it. And kind of, it takes a little arm twisting it up front to get them to put it in their mouth, but then they're usually coming back to it. So, yeah, I mean, does anyone have a contrary point to that you want to add, Shane or Gina, Adam?
Well, I'll just add that, you know, I think for me, there's no point in doing Chardonnay from Oregon unless you can hit a real high note that differentiates us at least from anywhere else in the New World. And so we almost overinvest, I think, in some ways on our Chardonnay program, starting in the vineyards, you know, planting on really top quality, top-notch sites. There's some amazing work that we still have to do on clonal diversity out there, which there's some really cool things. Getting these vines to have some vine age, and then on the winemaking front, you know, basically not cutting any corners, and really, you know, for us, if I decide, which I have, that I want to see these over vintage for 18 months in barrel, in the highest quality Burgundian coopered barrels I could get. We use a lot of large format barrels for slower and more regulated oak integration. Yeah, if you're looking at the bottom line, you know, you probably wouldn't even started the project, but no one, you know, in previous generations looked at the bottom line for Pinot Noir either. So I kind of feel like we'll just cross our fingers, and, you know, as long as we like the wines we're drinking from what we're making, we just got to convince enough people that we're right.
Yes, well said. And it's great because there has been more and more press acknowledgement of some of the Chardonnays that we're doing, and it's great to see that endorsement of the hard work. And I, you know, I'll tip a little hat too to sort of the ORCA, or the Oregon Chardonnay Alliance. People as a typical fashion, much to this collaboration, we've done a lot of work sharing what we do on Chardonnay across cellars and saying, how do you pick your grapes? Where do you pick them? Where are you planting? How do you process them? So I think that's helped us really accelerate our quality continually. So not unlike the early days in Pinot too. So yeah, that's great. Good stuff. I'm looking forward to many more years of Chardonnay. So maybe we should get into the lots because they're really unique because there's pairs. So let's start with lot number 46, which is Elk Cove and Tendril. So Adam and Tony putting together a 5-case lot of Chairman Chardonnay called the Good Maverick. So Adam, you want to take us through what that was like? What's behind the name? What's the flavor profile?
Yeah, well, it was really fun working with Tony. You know, it's, I guess, kind of related to that friendly sharing of ideas spirit. You know, I've known Tony for over 20 years and probably more actually. You know, we're good buddies and we taste together. We often, you know, I buy grapes from his vineyard. He buys grapes from my Mount Richmond property. So we were already working together pretty closely. So it was an easy ask to rope him into being the other half of this lot. For those of you who don't know Tony, he was the founding he was the winemaker at Domaine Serene for many years. As soon as they started their big project up on the hill after they moved out of Ken Wright's cellar, he was the winemaker for, gosh, probably 15 plus years. Rob, you would know. But anyway, so Tony's got his own project now, Tendril Wines. He also consults for other folks, and really was a pioneer in the resurgence of the new Chardonnay kind of program for Oregon, both with his work at Domaine Serene and then on his own. This was fun because Maverick is a vineyard that he planted and owns just outside of Carlton. So both the vineyards that went into this are from the Yamhill Carlton AVA. His vineyard, I bought Chardonnay from there for my Pike Road project. And then he's done some really great work with it as well. So that's his half. It's from his Tendril Maverick Vineyard is what he calls it. So our portion of the blend was 50% from our Goodrich Vineyard, which is a vineyard also in the Yamhill Carlton AVA. It was planted by other folks, and we were fortunate enough to be able to buy it in 2014. I initially wasn't sure if I'd make Chardonnay from this vineyard, but true to Oregon fashion, as soon as I was under contract to buy it and doing my due diligence, I called up all my buddies that bought grapes from this vineyard, and including the folks over at Soder and Argyle, who both worked with this Chardonnay. And they're like, you know, don't be stupid, Adam, you should make Chardonnay from there. I knew it was a good site because they'd done good work with it. And that was really the start of our kind of resurgence of a Chardonnay program that had gone dormant for many years. So I've got 2 different clones over there. This one's from the 95 clone. We've actually since planted Chardonnay on 20 more acres on 3 other sites that we own. So this is just the beginning. And in terms of the process, you know, pretty casual. Like I said, Tony and I get together and taste occasionally, and it was fun to barrel taste some of his work from this vintage, and then we came up with a blend. I bottled it here on site at Cove because we have our own bottling equipment. It's always funny to bottle just 5 cases of wine when it's a blend, but we worked hard at it, and we're very happy with the results. I'd say that the wine from Maverick was a little fleshier, a little bigger, and I think the Goodrich added some tightness and some kind of focused acidity. And it's fun. I mean, it's fun for me to taste a truly unique, one-of-a-kind lot that is half what I made, half what Tony made. So cheers to whoever ends up buying it.
That's great, Adam. Yeah, it sounds like this this lot, and may be true for all you guys, is arguably far more challenging than putting together a lot for the Pinot side of things. So interesting to hear that and really put that collaboration together. Yeah, and just I was on mute earlier doing the typical Zoom faux pas. Yeah, Ken Wright was 1990 to 98, and then Tony came in 98 at Serene and went on till after I was gone in 2005. But yeah, great guy, a lot of fun. So I'm sure you guys had a blast kind of making it happen.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks, Adam. So Gina, let's move to lot number 59, which is Adelsheim and Britton Vineyards, Chardonnay lot, and it's entitled McRib. So that kind of caught my attention. I'm like, I haven't had a McRib, and I think I had it once when I was a kid or something. So kind of scared me.
Yeah, I've never had one. Full disclosure. But yeah, we made a wine sandwich. So the backstory of this wine is, for those of you guys who don't know, we're expecting David Adelsheim to present the wine. It's not David Adelsheim, it's me. I'm the winemaker at Adelsheim. But David and Ginny Adelsheim founded they bought the vineyard, our first vineyard in 1971. And that was in the Chehalem Mountains AVA. All of our estate properties are within the Chehalem Mountains AVA, which includes our Ribbon Springs vineyard in the Ribbon Ridge nested AVA of the Chehalem Mountains. And so our Chardonnay lot comes from the rib part of McRib, the Mac part of the McRib. It's from the Britton vineyard. So we were tasked to make a collaboration Chardonnay. We reached out to Robert Britton to see if he was interested. So they provided fruit from their Britton vineyard in McMinnville AVA. And it was just, I mean, it was really fun. This is our third collaboration now for the WVWA Chardonnay lots. And it's always super exciting because it's such a weird thing. We don't ever blend these kinds of things together. We normally are so focused on this one little tiny parcel and what is it exactly going to look like and do. And to go from McMinnville all the way over to Ribbon Springs, we're probably never going to make anything like this again. So for me, that's really exciting part. And it is very challenging. It's a lot more difficult to make those things come together in a sensible way than for the Pinot. So that is the challenge with these lots, but also that's sort of what I think keeps us coming back to them. So the Mac portion or the Britton portion of this lot is a little bit more robust, I would say. They tend to pick a little bit later than we do. So it has a lot of really nice lusciousness and richness. Our vineyard is a little bit higher elevation than most of our sites. So, and because of how early we pick, it tends to provide more of the brightness and the linearity and the firmness. So I really like this because I find there's a really nice balance between like sort of the forwardness of Chardonnay, but also the restraint of Chardonnay. So it kind of toes that line between the two.
That's awesome. Now you've described the McRib. So now I understand why it's McRib. Ah. I went to Texas A&M, so I'm an Aggie. I'm a little slow, along with Rollin and a few others. So that's good. Also, I think you were saying that the Adelsheim portion is just from one lot and one block, whereas Britton is more of a blend. Is that right? Or a blend of clones?
So ours is from our favorite block at Ribbon Springs. We have 3 blocks of Chardonnay currently, with a lot more coming into production in the next couple of years. It's our favorite site for our estate site for Chardonnay. The Britton is a field blend of a few different blocks, and they have both Dijon and some California heritage selections there. So there's a sort of a great diversity, and ours was a very extremely focused selection. So again, it was interesting to kind of piece those things together.
That's awesome. And although you're not David, you certainly have been at Adelsheim a while too. It's not like it's a new gig
Not
for
as long
you,
as David.
So.
He's always going to win that. Yeah, I started in early 2007.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, Gina. That's great. Appreciate that. And I do have Robert Britton's bag in my office still, so I think I probably need to get it back to him, I think from one of those blending sessions. Let's go to lot number 70, which is Bethel Heights and Walter Scott. So Ben, take us through that. That's an interesting partnership, obviously, and you know, so many ways. So go for it.
Yeah, I feel I should first say that Gina should win like some sort of award for not murdering Robert Britton and making a collaborative lot with him, because that's one of probably the most headstrong, stubborn people I know in the Oregon wine industry. So
We've actually done a
collaborative
few
lot,
collaborations with him, and he's been great. If he's listening.
I hope he is. I love Robert.
Yeah.
I kid 'cause I care.
I know you wouldn't say it if you didn't want to. I hope he was listening today.
So our collaborative lot's all Eola Hills. It is named the God of Wind. You can see that. If you can't tell from Rob's gently fluttering bangs, it's windy here. The Eola Hills are named after Aeolus, the keeper of winds in Greek mythology. And so we sort of stuck to that. You know, I'll echo what Gina said. Collaborations are hard. I mean, I think, you know, it's not even a matter of sort of putting two things together and blending with another person who's sort of on equal footing to you. It's, you know, even just the lexicon of how we all talk about wine, you know, in terms of how we talk about texture, aroma, acidity. I mean, it's all extremely subjective. And I think, you know, it's one of the reasons why I employee continuity in wineries is important. So you're all, you know, over a couple of years, you realize you're all speaking the same language. I was fortunate in this. Our collaboration was actually very easy because Ken and I are good friends. Ken and Erica, I mean, I could walk down there in 5 minutes, down at Walter Scott. They've been there for a number of years. So Ken and I taste together a lot, Erica as well. So I think we sort of approached this with some sort of common ground in terms of how we wanted to make the wine. Ken and I share a block at Justice Vineyard, which we own. It's a block of 76 and 95 planted in 1999. We share it every other row. And so the intention, of course, if you're like, oh, you have Justice, I have Justice, it's every other row, we'll just do that. We said that now for 3 or 4 years, and it just continues to not work. So we didn't do that. Our portion comes from our Wente. So cuttings taken from the Wente Vineyard in Livermore, California, and just stuck in the ground at Bethel Heights in 1977. And Ken's is from Ex Novo, which is right on the other side of the hill behind me, which is anywhere between 18 and 20 different clones planted every other row. It's owned by Craig Williams, a winemaker from California and the former COO of Crimson Wine Group. It's really interesting. I've walked it. The cluster morphology is all over the place. I don't think I could come up with 18 clones of Chardonnay off the top of my head if I tried. I'd be surprised if I could even do half of that. Craig, of course, won't tell anybody what everything is, so it's all a big mystery, which kind of makes it fun. But Ken is tasked with picking it all at the exact same time. That's one of the stipulations of him getting the grapes, is that you have to pick all of it at the same time. You know, I mentioned, you know, for us, it's being a little cooler down here in the Eola Hills. You know, we don't have to worry as much about retaining acidity. I mean, for our Wente, it's mainly just picking it when the acidity finally starts to go down. I don't know how the hell Ken approaches even sampling that, because you have, of course, a mix of overripe, ripe, and underripe, depending on how you feel about those 3 words, all at the same time. And he presses it all together. So it's tricky. But this wine actually came together really, really easy. We spent an afternoon sort of tasting through each other's wines. We found 2 things that we liked, and then it was just a matter of sort of fussing about oak percentage, solids. Both Ken and I tend to at least ride a slight line of looking at putting the wine into more of a reductive shape. And of course, that was what all the arguing was just how much is too much. And I think we landed in a really good spot. This is actually the first time I've tried the wine since we put it in the bottle. You know, but just about 27% new oak, so not very much. Yeah, and I think we kind of achieved what we were aiming at in terms of style. And it's fortunate that both he and I sort of tend to like the same style of wine. As I mentioned, that can be a little tricky with collaborative lots.
That's great, Ben. Thank you. That's a good overview. So let's move over to Shane on lot number 84. So this is Gran, Moraine, and Martin Woods. And this is Intrepid Dreamers Everlasting Chardonnay.
I love that name. I think we came up with that. It was just kind of, we're throwing back and forth some silly things. And the owner of Martin Woods, Evan and Sarah, the owners, are very dear friends of ours. And whenever we started working and doing a collaborative lot this year, it was mostly like, you know, in the wine industry, I think we all work too much, and sometimes you just need excuses to hang out with your friends more. And that was kind of the the motivation behind working with Evan on this, is like, well, if we say that we're going to make a wine together, we're going to hang out a little bit more at least. So that's great. And we got it all blended up back in February, I believe. So it was pre you know, social isolation days. So that was fun. You know, kind of what we wanted to take this is, Evan and I are both really into mineral driven Chardonnays. We're all about like sleekness and verve and energy. And that was kind of, I thought that the silliness of the name implied some of those sort of thoughts behind the wine as well. I guess the other thing I wanted to mention about the collaborative efforts that we're all doing here is, I think it's well past due for the wine industry to be a part of doing this, and for Oregon is the perfect place to do it. I mean, we're all working collaboratively so often anyway, but I mean, look at beer and the beer and brewing industries and how many collaborative beers there are actually on the market. So, you know, I take it to as a challenge to anyone listening or wanting to work with this, is like, let's all do this more. Let's not just do 5 cases every once in a while. Let's do some commercial wines. I think it's imperative for the wine industry to do some things like this, to really step outside of our comfort zone. I learn a lot whenever I'm working with other winemakers, and I think that goes both ways. So yeah, I challenge everyone to do more of this. This is good stuff. And this wine's rocking too, man. It's killing it today. So sleek.
That's great, Shane. I think you're right. I mean, it's like having fun. I remember, you know, it seemed like there goes in cycles where we have so much fun in the wine industry, and then it gets really hard for a while, and like some of the fun leaks out for a bit. And it's good to bring the fun back in and have those friendships and revitalize some of these things, because what we're making is really a crafted, a passionate program, and it's about a lot more than just making a drink, you know? So I think you're exactly right. Having a good excuse to collaborate, stretch ourselves, learn from each other, and bring it to market is great to see. So I love these lots. I'm kind of curious about, because we only have one half of these collaborations here. I know we've kind of touched on some of the personalities behind the other sides of these lots, but maybe I feel a little bit like we should touch on it a tad bit more and I know you kind of did some on stylistic and approach to things, but maybe just touch again on, you know, maybe your favorite attribute of your collaborative partner on these lots. So, you know, for Elk Cove, Adam, you know, what do you really pull from Tony that you enjoy most into this sort of collaboration?
Well, I think, you know, as a winemaker, I know for all of you, you know that Tony's an incredibly thoughtful, smart winemaker. And I guess I really appreciated being able to team up with him, because in some ways, you know, we have a similar passion for finding great vineyards and making great wine, but we're just have a different path. And that, you know, I was obviously born into Elk Cove, and having my dad as a winemaker before me, it's fun for me to hang out with Tony, who had a very different path, who studied and found his passion later, well, as an adult.
After the asparagus work in the fields, yeah.
Yeah. And just that his project is smaller than ours. So, you know, we're by no means a large winery by California standards, but, you know, we've got 400 acres and a fairly large winery with a lot of layers and a lot of people to help me do what I do. And it's great to go down to Tony's place where he's got help. He's got a great assistant, but it's pretty much just the two of them out there doing every job from the beginning to the end, which really kind of reminds me more of working with my dad in the, when I was a preteen and teen here at Cove, when we were probably about the same size as Tony's winery. So just in general, it's fun to, work with someone you respect, and you, I always say, in terms of winemakers, so often we have an idea, we have a good thought and a good guess as to what the answer is. We might only have half that answer. And if you don't team up with people that are smart and thoughtful and have the potential to have the other half of that answer, you're stupid. And I love the idea that through the collaboration, I become a better winemaker. I hope with Tony would become a better winemaker. And I think that story's replicated, hundreds of times throughout the valley here in Oregon. It's a great place to hone your craft, and whether you went to school for winemaking or kind of were more self-taught through experience. Everybody's got something to bring to the table, and I just know that as an industry we appreciate those collaborations, and we certainly had that with Tony and I on this Chardonnay lot.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's a good way to put it. Gina, with you and Robert, I know Robert pretty well. I know you pretty well. So, I mean, what did you draw from Robert as a good learning for you, and what do you think he took from you?
Well, I mean, we've shared a lot of 3 different Pinot sources, in some cases for several years now. So for a while, we would get together every year and taste each other's version of the same block or half block of fruit. So we would grill him about his production style and the kinds of ways that he would extract Pinot. And so we have a relatively good relationship. We don't see him or their associate winemaker, Emily, as much as I would like to anymore. But when we were trying to figure out who to do the collaboration with, they rose to the top pretty quickly. Obviously, we have a lot of respect for Robert. He's worked for a long time in Napa, and then also now in the Willamette Valley. He has a depth of experience that I certainly admire. So for us, it was a pretty natural collaboration. What I didn't know was how the wine was going to come together, because it is pretty disparate. Unlike, Ben's idea initially, have the same vineyard and just look at stylistic differences, to have 2 vineyards that are so distinctive in general, and then certainly distinct from each other, that was going to be the real, I think, puzzle piece. So that was where I think the collaboration went really well, because we were able to sit down and talk pretty often and taste and figure out what's going to work best. And I've always found Vicky and Emily to be pretty, like, what do you think? And so we'll have a conversation about what we should be working on, what we should do, what's the next step. So I mean, it actually, I had no complaints. It was a great time.
I can't wait to taste it. It's probably the best McRib I've ever had, I'm sure, by a long shot.
And the only.
And probably the most expensive, too. But that's all aside. Ben and Shane, it sounds like you guys both have really close relationships with who you collaborated with in a personal way as well as in a business way. So it sounds, arguably maybe easier or maybe more challenging, because it's not coming at it from such different points of view. Ben, Shane, go ahead.
We thought it was pretty easy. We tasted each other's wines a few times, and went into the cellar at my winery. He grabbed a few samples, and then we're just looking for those wines that had that that real definition of sleekness and energy that we kind of talk about. That was so put together in a day, really. I don't think there was any new oak, to just talk a little bit about the wine a little bit more. interesting thing with Martin Woods and what they're doing is they're using a lot of Oregon oak. They're even harvesting oak from their own property and stave aging it, and then having it coopered here in McMinnville. But these were a couple from old Oregon oak barrels, which is pretty cool. Corpus Garryana. I love that. That's so Oregon. And, the winery's in Evan's house in his basement. And it's out in the middle of nowhere. It's a very Oregon winery and an experience anytime you go visit those guys. So, we taste a lot together. So I think we kind of knew what we were looking for.
That's awesome. That's cool about the Oregon oak too. That's really cool. Ben, obviously Ken and Erica, how was that? What do you take away from that collaboration?
Well, I mean, I think, perspective is always good. I mean, Ken, I worked in Burgundy forever ago. I think Ken's been back twice since, has a great perspective. And Erica was sort of, one of the, seemed like she was consulting for every wine list in Portland there for a little while. So, a lot of sort of worldly perspective on wine, which I think is helpful. And I think, one of the things that Ken and I, a couple things, I mean, one of them is just being honest with each other. I think when you're tasting through somebody else's cellar, it's easy to just nod your head and say good job with every wine. I think Ken and I really do try to push each other in terms of what's working and what's not. And I think we can both sort of put our ego aside and be willing to hear some polite criticism. And the other thing is, I think, with Chardonnay especially, we're all working with good raw materials. And so the devil is always in the details. Those little qualitative differences, I think, are always born of little differences, little changes here and there, little things we can do to get better. And Ken and I are very sharing with information in terms of our press cycles, the equipment we're using. I just got in a whole bunch of tanks that I saw in Ken's cellar that he saw and Dominic Lafon's cellar, and sort of letting these ideas sort of just germinate out, from my cellar to his, and both just trying to get better and better. I mean, obviously, we make a chunk of Chardonnay here, but Ken and Erica are invested. I mean, they're 50-50 Chardonnay and Pinot, and there are not many wineries in Oregon who can say that. Yeah, and they're wonderful, wonderful people. I mean, our kids are the same age. I actually spent last Sunday in their kiddie pool drinking beer with Ken and playing with our kids. So they're great people. They're phenomenal neighbors. I hope they stay on the property forever and ever, because I can't imagine having anybody better. And I will say one other thing, in the spirit of collaboration, the man taking a drink right now, Adam Campbell, called me when I started working at Bethel Heights way back in 2005, just to say, hey, Ben, I know you're going back to work with your family. I know it's not always easy. If you ever need somebody to talk to or some perspective, you can give me a call anytime. Adam, I don't know if you remember that, but I certainly have never forgotten it, and I appreciate it.
Well, I'm glad I did it. I didn't remember that, but other people had done that for me, and we have a unique set of advantages and also struggles being second generation.
Yeah, that's well put, both Adam and Ben. And, I think it's the authenticity and the honesty of these conversations that you have. It's not just telling you good things. It's kind of pointing out things that other people see that, they don't really see the same way. And I think the more we can get out of that agreement of everyone having the same opinion and look at this diversity, the quicker and the better we're going to become. So I think that's great and a good highlight that you mentioned, Ben. That's awesome. I just wish I could taste these wines right now. So I'm kind of bummed that you guys have them in your glass and I don't have them in mine. But hopefully soon, maybe next week at the auction, some of us can get together and taste some of these.
Tasting pretty awesome in my backyard right now, Rob. Great.
I'll be right over. I think there was a question in the chat there, Julia, about maybe about the Bethel Heights Walter Scott collaboration.
Yeah, Ben, the question from Richard, how is the God of Wind different from your ex novo bottling? Oh, I see, you just answered it.
I just answered it, but I can do it out loud. I think, it's interesting, ex novo is so diverse. And our Wente, either just through maybe some sloppy cuttings or mutation over the years or whatever. I mean, I can find clusters out there that are almost as big as my head. And I can also find clusters that fit in the palm of my hand, that sort of, when people talk about Wente, the sort of hens and chicks, big berries, and interspersed little berries. But really, the cluster morphology is all over the place. I mean, it's the running joke. We send our interns in there to go sample because we know they're going to come back with confused looks on their faces, and like one giant cluster in a bucket with a whole bunch of little ones around it, and sort of shrugging their shoulders like, is this right? And I imagine for Ken, it's sort of the same thing. That it's challenging to sample things when you can find grapes that taste really good and grapes that taste really bad, one plant away from the other. So as I answered, I mean, I really think they have a lot more in common than they're different. Tasting this wine now, I've certainly consumed my fair share of Ken's ex novo bottlings, and I really don't find them to be all that different. I wish I could come up with something provocative to say about that, but I just tasted it, and it's really not all that different.
I have a question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you all to give some funny stories / dirt on your collaborators, but I see that none of them are tuned in, so we maybe or maybe not want to open up that can of worms. But I also am curious, with all of you Chardonnay winemakers, where do you see Oregon Chardonnay in the next 5 years in terms of like what kind of decisions are going to be made? What are people going to be talking about in terms of farming it, in terms of making it, and in terms of selling it?
Yeah, and I would add on to that too, just that a big shift that happened back in the 1990 or so is these new clones. But I'll let you winemakers take it a bit more thoroughly from here. So who wants to start it? Gina?
Sure. Well, so the first thing that popped into my head was really, how do we farm Chardonnay differently than we do for Pinot Noir? And to me, I think that's where we really need to be focusing our efforts the next 2 years. I mean, a lot of times when we're walking through for thinning decisions on Pinot Noir, the discussion of wings or no wings has a lot to do with the crop load. And I think for Chardonnay, at least based on when we pick it, which is relatively early, what we're seeing is that the wings are not as ideal because they have just unresolved sort of tannins in there that we don't want in the wine. And again, it has very much to do with when we're picking and what our style profile looks like. So that's one thing. And obviously, how much yield you're going to be carrying for Chardonnay is pretty important too. So for us, that's where a lot of our experimentation have been in the last few years. Wings, no wings, yield. And those are the kind of refinements I think we're going to have to start getting into for Chardonnay. And then it's like an open book. It's like, how many leaves do you leave on? How high are you hedging? It is a really different beast, and it should be treated uniquely and not just sort of a replica of how we farm for Pinot Noir.
Yeah, well said. Shane, do you want to add on?
Yeah, I think our main, issue, I think quality's improving every year, and we're learning more every year. But man, we really need to have the category created. This needs to be in every restaurant, and that eventually, it needs to be on menus. We need to have an Oregon Chardonnay category. We need to have it recognized, and we're creating that category still. It's something that I think in the next 5 years, that's what we really need to focus on. There's a lot of Chardonnay coming on. There's been a lot of Chardonnay planted in the last 5 years, so we're gonna have to figure out how to sell it, and figure out how to get in people's mouths. Because once it's in people's mouths, it's all right. They get it then.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was saying up front, and I appreciate Shane, that view of you guys really helping not just sell your wine but create the category, and that broader view of things, which is similar to Pinot Noir. We were out there promoting Oregon Pinot Noir as a category to build it, and I think that's the same that you say we need to do for Chardonnay. So that's a real good point. Adam, you want to add something to that?
Well, I was just going to say that I know for us, it's, selling wine throughout the U.S. and I guess we're in about 12 export markets. It's amazing how you see that in Oregon, people drink all kinds of Oregon wine, right? Like we sell lots of white wine, lots of rosé and Riesling, because Oregonians are passionate about Oregon wine. So we sell a lot of Chardonnay here in this local market, but the farther you get away from home base, the more focused people are on just Pinot Noir. So when we're selling wine in New York or certainly in export markets, it's like, oh, Oregon, that's your Pinot Noir. And I think that, you know, I would hope that we get enough exposure within the Northwest community. We've got to broaden that out and get it around the country. I think there's a great opportunity. I think that the wine drinking world is after these types of wines with this vibrancy and freshness that, I guess in my estimation, Oregon is the perfect place, at least in the US, to make that kind of Chardonnay. To jump on to Shane's point there, we just got to get it in people's glasses and promote it as something uniquely Oregonian about this Chardonnay.
Yeah, totally. And I think much like Pinot, you know, it was a lot of restaurants and somm driven, and it typically started to be originally high priced wines, you know, and I think we're seeing the same a little bit on Chardonnay. That being said, we certainly are also now seeing a great diversity of price points on Pinot and Oregon Chardonnay starting to fill that same way, which I think is great to be able to show the quality at different price points. So Ben, you guys have been doing, you know, I would argue really approachable price points on Chardonnay for a long time, and now expanding that quite a bit. Do you kind of agree? And how are you seeing your Chardonnay sales?
Well, I mean, the price points used to all be low. I mean, they stopped making Chenin Blancs; they couldn't get more than $8 a bottle for it. So, you know, I've always been a believer that, you know, that you can deliver quality across price points. I mean, that's one of the cheapest ways to get in and out of the sort of supernals of the Burgundy world, is you just find their Bourgogne and buy that, because if they put their name on it, it's going to be pretty good. And I think most of us would ascribe to the same thing. If you're going to put your label on it, regardless of price point, I mean, obviously you're going to feel better about one thing versus another, but we need to be delivering quality everywhere. I mean, I think one of the challenges compared to Pinot is, you know, Pinot is not planted everywhere in the world, whereas Chardonnay is legion. It's planted everywhere. You're not just competing with one or two regions doing it. Everybody does it. And so there's a lot of different versions of what Chardonnay is out there in the world. And I think, you know, Oregon, just based on our size, you know, just, you know, that little sort of tiny little speck out in the world, we're never going to compete on volume. I think it's always going to be quality. I think, to Julia's question, I think in the next 5 years, we're going to see quality take a big leap forward. I would argue that it sort of has been happening over the last 5 years. I mean, I know there's a lot of older brands. Jason Lett, I know, just probably getting mad at me somewhere, or he just shuddered somewhere when I said that. I mean, there's been good Chardonnay made from the beginning. I'm certainly not saying that everybody's suddenly doing a better job. There's been good jobs done for a very long time. But I think sort of collectively, there's been a big step taken forward in the last couple of years. I think some of that is different clonal material. That, you know, it's a little easier to get Chardonnay ripe now. I think we're starting to see some of the plant material that was a pariah back in the day sort of regaining favor as the weather warms up a little bit. And I think also technique. I think, you know, looking at, you know, to Gina's point, more experimentation, both in the vineyard and in the winery. You know, looking at how long we're running out canes, things like that. I mean, crushers are starting to show up in my neighborhood, and I thought those were dead and gone 20 years ago, and yet now everybody in my neighborhood is getting a crusher again. So, it's something I like to see. I haven't bought one yet. I'm going to see how they do with theirs, but yeah, I like the fact that people are experimenting again, that they're pushing themselves to do a better job year in and year out. And I think ultimately for us, you know, we're not at the price points they are yet in California. We're not at the price points yet in Burgundy, but as my friends know, I mean, you put all the wines in brown bags and you can find quality at the lowest price points, and you can find quality at the highest price points. You can also find bad wine at both of those price points. And at least in blind tastings with, you know, some of my peers' wines, and, you know, some of the harder wines to find that float around out there in the ether, I think we're there.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, I really expect these lots to do exceptionally well. I think they're going to be some of the most interesting and hopefully competitive bid lots of the auction. You know, I really appreciate all your insights on these collaborative lots and Chardonnay in particular, and great kind of going through that. Do you have any parting last question, Julia, or anything in particular you want to cover?
I think I might like to hear if you have any funny stories about your collaborators at this point in the afternoon. Happy Friday.
You can give them,
There
and
none
then
I
we'll
can
sign
reveal
off.
personally.
You can give them, and then we'll sign off real quick, so there'll be no argument. Okay, let's go in lot number 46, Elk Cove and Tendril. Adam, spill the beans.
About what? Sorry, I missed the question.
If you have a funny story about Tony,
Oh gosh, a funny story about Tony.
for the two of you.
You know, my only funny story about Tony is that I will say that he's been buying grapes from my Mount Richmond vineyard for like probably 15 years. I've got an amazing vineyard manager, Travis, and Tony is such a tough customer in terms of when he goes to the vineyard, and he's a taskmaster and really rides Travis hard to do amazing work out there on Tony's blocks at our Mount Richmond vineyard. And I think if I really thought about why I continue to sell Tony grapes, it's honestly to make me look like a little bit nicer guy to Travis. So I think that's, I'm going to keep Tony around just to be the bad guy, good guy.
That's good. That's great. Gina?
Robert made me sign an NDA, so I can't share anything. Sorry. No, I mean, there's nothing. I have no weird stories or dirt to share.
Okay, we'll take that. Lot 59, Britton and Adelsheim. Don't forget lot 59. So lot 70, Bethel Heights and Walter Scott.
It's not really about making this wine, but Ken came up to help me unload some tanks that were delivered in a horizontal position. It was the last container that left Italy before they completely shut down their port during the pandemic. They arrived in port into Seattle right when Seattle issued a quarantine, and they showed up at our place a couple days later. And so we were all convinced that we were all going to get coronavirus from these stupid tanks that I bought from Italy. The truck driver was not socially distancing himself at all. In fact, he was very much interested in helping us out. And because I'd gotten the tanks from Ken, I didn't even ask him to come and help me, but he showed up. He showed up and helped us unload the whole thing. It would have taken me forever just to figure out how to get him out of the goddamn truck. But Ken, because he had done it before, he just, MacGyvered the whole thing really quick. And, thankfully none of us died or got sick. So I don't know, that's as good as I got. And Gina, there's no way that Robert at some point didn't say that all of the current research says that what you just said is wrong, and then not cite any like bibliography for saying it. He had to say it at least once. He always does.
She's staying quiet. She's staying quiet.
You get
yes.
nothing.
Ken is one of those guys I see everywhere in the valley. Every time I go to get a burrito, there he is. It's like he's one of those guys. He's everywhere. Okay, and then Shane, Gran, Moraine, and Martin Woods, lot number 84.
So many with Evan and myself. I mean, he's been to my bachelor party, or weddings and many life events. But I think one of my favorite times with Evan was we were out morale hunting in the Cascades one spring, and just we're out all day not finding anything, and we get back to the camp, and we're camping at Camp Sherman, and just drinking, going for it. And we're looking around, and there's Queen Boletes everywhere, and so many, in fact, that we filled our cooler and got in a bolete fight, and like throwing them at each other, just being ridiculous humans. And that's pretty much how most of our hangs end up.
Oh, that's great. Good stories. Thank you so much, Gina, Shane, Ben, Adam, Julia. Great to catch up for an hour and see your faces. Look forward to getting back together in person soon. Thanks for crafting these wines and sharing them with us, and look forward to heavy bidding on them. So I'll pass it over to Julia to wrap it up for the day.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rob. Panelists, thank you. I so appreciate your time today. Attendees, thank you so much for joining us. And I just dropped the link in the chat to register to bid if you're trade and you haven't already done so. We hope you'll join us next week, August 11th, 12th, and 13th, with a live close on the 13th, starting at 12 Pacific time. Thanks, everybody. Cheers.
Thanks. See you guys.
Cheers.